I'm glad that you are all here this evening. I'm Dr. Vincent Bacot. I'm the director of Wheaton's Center for Applied Christian Ethics. I also teach theology. That's my other gig here at Wheaton. I'm very excited that we have Storm Cecile here and Ice is lying with us tonight. At the Center for Applied Christian Ethics, a lot of times we put on lectures and you present opportunities for moral discernment through those formal ways. This evening is an evening of creativity and engagement. And so I'm very thankful for partnering with Stephen Gaskin in putting all this together tonight. So he is going to be your main host for the evening. So thank you for being here. And now I'll hand you to Stephen.
Sweet. That's what's up. All right. So that was a good start. I feel like Bacot, man. So let me just quickly say, Bacot was my professor in my master's program. Wow. So fast forward, we get to work together, man. This is an honor. I just want to hug you right now, and give you, come on, bring it in, brother, bring it in. I'll tell you right now, I didn't deserve to pass your class. I appreciate the grace. This is my type of vibe right here. I love spoken word poetry. I love storytelling. I think storytelling has a powerful way of somewhat going under the radar of all of the intellectual conversations that's held here at the college and really get straight to the heart of things. Storytelling has a great way of creating empathy, which I believe could build bridges for relationship. Through that relationship, we get to know one another and get to see that we're all human. And then from there, we can build some reconciliation and have some really good conversations towards change. So I love storytelling. I love poetry. Now we got some crazy, and when I say crazy, what I really mean is it's like incredible, right? Does that make sense? Y'all with me? If I say, man, if I talk to Isis and I say, man, Isis, yo, that spoken word piece was dumb. That's not a bad thing. It's actually incredible. It's like one of the highest honors you can get. You see what I'm saying? So tonight you may hear some of that type of jargon. Yeah, I am excited about tonight. I get to, introduce Isis. She's a student here that I've gotten to know over the years. And I'm telling y'all, man, she is incredible. But this is what I'm gonna need. I'm gonna need some crowd participation. I mean, the culture I come from, man, it's a call and response. Yeah. So tonight I want you to snap your fingers when it's time to snap your fingers. Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. It's gonna be some of that. If you want to shout and just say, "Come on, Isis, I hear you, sister," you can do that tonight. Is that okay, Isis? Woo. Maybe. Well, okay, we might get there. Okay. So let's practice some of these call and responses, and let's really build the energy and the vibe up in here tonight. So if I said, "Hey, we got Isis tonight," how would you respond to that? Woo! That's decent. It's fairly decent. I'm gonna try it again, Isis, because I know who you are. Do I need to play the album for you? Shameless plug. Anybody heard of Scrapbook Stories 107? The album? Okay, all three of y'all. That's what's up. We got Isis in the building. We love Isis. I'm just kidding. We got Bacot in the building. We got Paul Jelson in the building. We have Storm Cecile in the building. I'm excited for y'all here tonight. She is awesome. And then we have her husband, Morgan, in the building. Yo, tonight is going to be an incredible night. I'm excited. But as I am a spoken word poet myself, I feel like I can't grab the mic and not bless it on a spoken word poetry night, right? I feel like I got to share something. Can I do that?
Yes, please.
All right, sweet. I didn't plan this. I don't know what I'm gonna share, so I'm just gonna go off the top with something. And if I mess up, y'all with me, right? Yeah. If I mess up, y'all just gotta cheer the loudest, just to encourage me. Right? We were never designed to live alone. See, do To the divine throne we are tethered. To a triune God and all things working together, we mingle in the midst of that measure. A people of every nation, color and language. Every tongue shall confess praising Jesus forever. This was the original intent, however. Sin entered in and we cracked under pressure. Believe it or not, Ripley relationships were severed, and there we find broken wings. In this cosmic air, there are floating feathers. Threshing floors of our hearts are broken seams. A bunch of broken beings, yet never without hope. See, whether you are hurt from rejection or undergo turbulent clouds of depression, it can get better. Taste of his goodness, for there is your pleasure. Faith, hope, and love, for there is your treasure. To the Philippian church was a letter.
Yeah.
An exhortation to be unified in the spirit. Psalm 133, sentiments of being
Say that
intimate,
word.
you can hear it.
Yeah.
A koinonia, a solidarity, a shalom commune. A brotherhood, a sister. She said, yeah, that's me, I live there. A brotherhood and sisterhood, no gender exclusion, a place of love, flowing like a river from God to God. One God, true God, one mind on one accord, worship and you God choose. A spiritual desert or embrace opportunity to be a tree planted in streams of water, living in community. Welcome to Wheaton College. Let's get this show on the road. With no further ado, man, I get to invite to the stage my sister. Look, I'm telling you right now, I'm the only child. I don't even have any sisters. But Isis is like a little sister to me, and ever since I've gotten to know her, every stage and platform I get to have here, I am promoting her and putting her on it. So ladies and gentlemen, Isis.
I'm just gonna say real quick, I love a microphone because people just do whatever you tell them to do. It's so fun. I love it here. Yeah, my name is Isis. Iyon is my middle name, and that's what's on all the posters and stuff, so that's fun. My parents gave me two names that start with I, a long I, which is just not a popular thing to be doing, but they did it anyway. And then they did it like 6 more times. I have 6 little sisters, so there's good in these streets. I love having sisters. I love Jesus. I love poems. I've been writing poetry since I was 13, so everything for the first 2 years was really dark and sad and scary. And then Jesus intervened, which is what he always does. So yeah, I'm gonna do 3 poems for you before introducing our main event, Storm Cecile. Give her a clap, clap, clap. Yeah, I'm gonna do 3 poems. Oh, I'm so sorry, I interrupted your applause. My bad, y'all. I'm gonna do 3 poems for you. Yeah, all of them are about life. That's what I write about. I write about Jesus, and I write about what it is to be me. All of me as a Black woman here in these United States of America, or as W.E.B. Du Bois said, these yet to be United States, but that's a topic for another day. All right, let me get back on the script. I'm gonna start with a poem called Art. All right, seems fitting. It is said that art reflects life. But what if we're all just restless marble and paint refusing to dry? Reflecting one another and desperate to be seen. See, life reflects anything daring enough to be more than nothing. And aren't we something? Aren't we everything?
Yeah.
And art reflects anything daring enough to be alive and in pain at the same time. And don't you feel the stabbing between inhales too? The suspension between destruction and creation.
Yeah.
The living and dying all at once. Isn't that what it means to be alive? Isn't dying just chasing life around a tree until the distance between you shrinks and it starts chasing you back? Doesn't death taste like betrayal? Isn't that why it's so cold between your ribs? So cold between parted lips, making you gasp like shoulder rammed in the chest. You see, I used to think that death was too dark to reflect anything. I used to think it only absorbed, only took, only stole. But now, I wonder if, at least on this side of forever, it's just the bearer of bad truths. Like, mama warning you of danger as dad throws you ever recklessly higher. And maybe death doesn't warn you, but at least she never lies. When you finally do hit the ground, you don't blame yourself for the pain. Life should have known you couldn't fly. This next poem is called People and Trees. I wrote it in 2021. It was a longer project. I started with a poem that was pretty discombobulated. I was on a walk, and I did a lot of walking during the pandemic because I couldn't go do anything else. I couldn't go to Panera Bread. I couldn't go nowhere. So I was just walking around my neighborhood. And this was in the height of the George Floyd protests and things like that. And I was walking through there was a sidewalk patch, and I was walking, and I was just, I had my little Apple Watch on. I was like, she's fit or whatever. And to my right was a line of picket fences. And to my left was a bunch of trees, like a forest kind of deal, like the entrance to a forest. And I started having these thoughts, and I was having this conversation with Jesus already. And so I wrote this poem, and I hope you like it. And if you don't, you'll recover. It's called People and Trees. People and trees have a complicated relationship. They, so tall and strong, ancient but wise enough to stay silent, turn our toxins into oxygen.
Yeah.
And in return, we cut them down. Bend them to our will. Turn them into chairs to rock our babies. Paper for our dear Johns. Fuel for our fires. Roofs over our heads. Walls to keep us safe. Walls to lock us in. Walls to keep them out. See, people and trees have a complicated history.
Yeah.
See, I heard that life fell apart at a tree. I heard that death fell apart on a tree. I heard a tree introduced death. I heard a tree introduced life. I heard a tree held the dying author of eternity, and I heard the tree didn't let him fall.
Yeah. Say that.
I heard a tree was witness to two endings. The first, life as it was meant to be. And the second, death as we know it. Maybe that's why I bring my grief to the tree line. Press my body to bark brown as my skin and trace sticky sweet sap like my tears. The air is hot and full of pollen, but I suck in the smell of life because at least I can. See, Black people and trees, we have a strenuous history. The same limbs we may have climbed tomorrow if the rain would let up have held our flailing bodies still. It's not often I see an old tree and don't wonder what strange fruit have been hanged from our arms.
Yeah.
But still I bring my grief here.
Yeah.
And lay it down at the roots because there's something about being in the presence of a being who knows who its ancestors are. I ask my tree if she ever weeps at the picket fence she faces. If it reminds her of death the way that flashing lights, Skittles, parking lots do me.
Yeah.
She doesn't answer me, but I ask again anyway. I ask how she stills her shaking leaves at the sound of chainsaws. I tell her that sirens make me shake too. I ask her how she stands so tall even as her brothers are cut down and trampled underfoot. I ask her why she mourns trees she's never even met. I ask her to teach me how to mourn. I ask her if it ever stops hurting. Again, she doesn't answer me. Trees don't usually do that sort of thing. You see, people and trees, we have a complicated relationship. But then in the silence, the wind blows. And I hear this ancient whisper, this hum that seeps into my bones and reminds me that I am somebody's legacy. And grief, though wide as these roots and deeper than the ocean, will not drown me. No, grief is just proof that my blood is not forgotten those history refuses to remember. And I am not without hope. last poem, I'm gonna tell you a little story. I love a little monologue. You guys can't even leave. I love it. You could. You're not being held against it. But you feel compelled to stay. Yeah, so there is this story about this guy, right? The guy who invented rubber gloves. And so the story goes as follows, okay? So I read this one day. I was sitting in my room and I was like, I wonder who invented rubber gloves. That's so crazy, like, that's so interesting. And I read this story, which is a retelling of the story of the guy who made rubber gloves. And basically, this guy sitting at this bar with his friend, he's like, bro, he didn't say that. He was like in his 40s. So he was like, man, friend, person I know and love, but not really love. Like, I kind of like you like that. He said, let me tell you about the story of the guy who made rubber gloves. He had a wife, and she was a nurse. And she would go to work every day and come home with her hands all red and cracked and dry and bleeding. And he said to himself, I gotta do something about this. He was one of those scientist men that do things about things. And so he was like, I have to do something about this. So he invented rubber gloves. I'm sure it was a far more complicated story than, he just woke up one day and was like, rubber gloves. But he, created rubber gloves. And he said, I met so many women before I met my wife, people that I thought I could spend forever with. But when I met my wife, I knew she was the one because she compelled me to creation. So this poem is called When You Love, You Make. Roses are red, violets are blue. Does this poem feel incomplete to you too? Because when you love someone, you make. It's a story of everyone. They say that when boy meets girl, he builds her a house. I say, if he is brave enough to let love turn him puddle, he doesn't have to build the house if he lets vulnerability make it home. Because when you love, you make.
Yeah.
It's the story of everyone. They say that when girl meets boy, she gives him children. I say that if she's brave enough to let love Jericho her wall, she'll trust the roof to hold itself up and have hands free to fill their open concept home with family. Because when you love, you make. It's the story of everyone. It's when you meet me and I meet you, so I write you into poems I'll never read aloud. It's a story of rubber gloves. And X loves Y carved in the tree side. It's every bowl of mama's soup and every love song ever sang. Because love compels you to creation.
Yeah.
And didn't God create? Inspired by a private thought in an empty eternity, light came from the only tongue sharp enough to split darkness itself in half and separate land and sea.
Yeah.
Didn't he make air for the flying things and water for the swimming things and earth for the walking things and for the talking things? Didn't he make everything? But then we turned his voice down, pressed pedal to floorboard, anxious to get to where our truest fear, being alone, would finally be reality. Didn't he make a way when we made 3 right turns and still found ourselves left without a purpose? Didn't he see everything that was worthless in us and say, I do anyway? Didn't he make a way when we poured our cup sinful and balked at the bitter taste? Didn't he give us a new cup of grace? Didn't he make a way?
Yeah.
Didn't he make?
That he did.
Because when you love, you make.
Yeah.
When you are love, you create. Roses, blood red. Skies that are blue. A way when there is none.
Yeah.
And all things new.
Wow.
Thank you.
Make some noise for Isis again. Love you make. Can I freestyle?
Go for it. Woo. Yes.
I'm just about to try something. Don't laugh at me.
You can't top that though.
I know I can. You know what? I'm just gonna sit down.
No.
When you love, you make. Okay, my wife's name is Dominique. I'm gonna try this, right? Oh, she's not here. She's at home with the kiddos. Man, listen, I love my family. If you're on Instagram, you will see pictures of my family because that's basically all I post. But when you love, you make. I'm about to freestyle this.
Yeah.
Dear Dom.
Oh, that's a poem already.
That's okay. That's it. I can finish it.
No.
Okay, keep going. Dear Dom. Isis told me today, when you love, you make. I'm not too crafty with my hands, but when I come home, I make words sing your praises. That's all I got. That's it. I'm just kidding, y'all. Y'all don't gotta clap for that. I'm just playing around. But I do want to, Isis did inspire me to share something. I was talking to Storm and Morgan earlier today, and what you heard earlier was me doing spoken word poetry, right? What you just heard Isis do was spoken word poetry. What you're gonna hear Storm doing is spoken word poetry today. It's a difference with spoken word and rap. Anybody know the difference between those two? Both have imagery. Anybody want to share? Go ahead, just shout it out. Any differences? What is rap?
Rap is more structured.
Okay. More structured? Okay, what else we got?
You use the literary devices differently.
You use the literary devices differently, or? Yep.
So the way that you say it, the way that you say it and articulate it, it sounds different. Or it can sound different, especially with the pauses.
Yep.
And how you structure a blank space.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yep. Mostly with spoken word, you really don't have to rhyme. You can play in and outside of cadences. You can stretch your metaphors and similes and give, a story in a way that you can't necessarily convey within the bars of music and rap, right? So rap is a little bit more dancing on a beat. So when Isis was sharing that second piece, what's the name of that second piece? People in Trees. I got inspired. So I'm gonna share a rap verse with y'all, and then I'm gonna bring Isis back up. So can I do a rap verse really quickly?
Yep.
All right. So I'm here at Wheaton College. I grew up in Gary, Indiana. Anybody from here? You Gary, Indiana?
I'm
That-
from Indiana.
You from it, but not Gary, but
No,
you from Indiana.
Gary.
What part of Indiana?
Indianapolis.
Oh, okay. I love Indianapolis. If you're not in Gary, you basically move to Indianapolis. It's just either or. One of those. Well, anyway, I grew up in Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana is 84% African American. Navigating Wheaton and living in Wheaton and Lombard and these areas has been an adjustment, right? And man, it's just been good to see how God has been allowing my life, my wife, and my kids to really just be an instrument and a tool in His hands to really build up kingdom community. I want to be a part of what that looks like. But it doesn't come without suffering. It doesn't come without adjustments and challenges. So it's a verse that I wrote that I shared with Storm and Morgan earlier today. And I'm gonna share it out and I'm gonna bring Isis back up. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yo, I'm just gonna give you a verse out of this song, and it goes like this. I remember telling myself I'ma make it out. 13 with a paper route. Where I'm from, like a mosh pit, but it's nothing to really rave about. Look, young kid, taken in but never taken out. City looking like Breaking Bad. Reminiscing got me breaking down. Nah, you don't know the struggle. Killers working doubles, shifts in the jungle. Hit you with the bungle, drums on the block though, no one parading, sons getting shot, no vaccinations, Now I live on the street with no one look like me and I feel a little awkward. They got problems too, but it's different than mine. I got no one to talk to. Where my friends go? Family matters. Winslow. Didn't want to get stuck in the hood with my dreams, but I didn't want to get away from the kinfolk.
Say that.
I
Yeah.
I need you to do something for me. Don't say nothing, just hug me. Don't say nothing, but I'm all ears. I'm all hand. I'm listening. Tell me I ain't tripping. It's okay to feel what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Look, distance from auntie's kisses. All my little cousins, I don't know their name. See me, they ask for my shoes and my chain. See, I'm the type that'll give them some game. When you get out, don't forget where you came. Hit up my money. It ain't the same. I'm within range, but I understand we still distant. ISIS, everybody.
Stephen has been a gift to me in so many ways, so let's give another clap for Stephen, please. I'm really done opening, so what I'm gonna do is introduce the main event, all the way from London. Storm Cecile is coming, or she came, actually, she's here. Yeah, so give a hand clap for Storm Cecile. She is phenomenal, and she's come all the way from London to see us today.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Amazing. So my name's Storm. I am 24 years old. This is my husband, and I'm a full-time poet. I know that's a different career. You don't go to the job office for that, but here we are. So praise God. And just a bit about me before. I know you're gonna do an interview, so I won't say too much, but I've worked for a few cool people, like Nationwide Bank, Kugali, that's connected to Disney, and a few others. So I thought it'd be best to start with my kind of testimony piece. I feel like it's fitting, especially for where I am. And yeah, I'm gonna start with that. Not too long ago, I met God for the first time. And it didn't start off as a beautiful sight, although no nail-pierced hands or blood clots, just me. A broken heart that had enough, ready to unplug. I was over the abuse of being touched, left me feeling estranged, unworthy, searching for a calling. I mean, what does it mean to have a purpose when you feel cursed because he saw it fit to keep on hurting and hurting? Is it me? Do I deserve it? The flashbacks, they're haunting. As my body becomes an ocean, being motioned, I feel the crash turns to burning. He begins to tithe in. See, this is his worship. To him, it's worth it. As my body becomes braille, I wasn't meant to attend this service. As I flipper like a fish, my fins are being clipped, and to be honest, I was full of hate towards God because of this. I couldn't understand how such a loving God could condone such a thing. I said, Jesus, how can you say that life is a gift? My body was a pawn shop where he traded in his sins. I am dirty, far from worthy. I'm a cello full of broken strings. That's when Jesus walked into the room and he washed me with his hymns. He said, I love you. And back then, I didn't understand it, but I felt what he meant. I began to understand his love for me, and that's when word became flesh. He said, I understand your confusion, but understand I also wept. I feel your pain, despite the noose wrapped thrice around your neck. See, I came to loosen every chain and save. I died so that my glory can shine upon my children's face. So please, put down the pills and intake this instead, the word.
Yes.
The living bread, gospel in the flesh. My child, I know you're hurting, but from time began, I saw the test, I saw the mess, I saw the halo turn red and wrath consume your very steps, but please, take my hand, I'll carry you through this valley, this shadow, this death. You are more than the pain you have suffered. You are not a disgrace. You were bought with a price, and that reason is grace. And that is when the gospel became power, flowing through my veins. I saw the light of the world, and that's when things changed. Pride fell like manna. My heart of Israel became saved. See, suicide that night laughed so hard it could have died, but my God, my hero, the good news of the day took me out of the shadows and he brought me into the light. I am new in his presence, and this is the gospel through my eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've got a few more poems to share. One of them is called Men Are Trash. It's not about men being trash, but I just want to preface it to say it's actually about God's glory, but you got to follow me to the end. But I've got another poem for you. It's about my dad, and I remember when I became a Christian. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but when I was 14, my brother had a car accident, and I was really challenged by it because I was thinking, you know, God, if God, this God that exists is so good, then why is there suffering in the world? And I remember thinking, well, I remember coming to the conclusion that it's actually not that, you know, we're good, it's actually that we're bad and we need a good God to walk with us. And that was the conclusion in my poem, you know, in that abuse, in that struggle, in that difficulty, that actually that person that was abusive towards me actually wasn't a good person, but actually they needed a good God to walk alongside them. They needed to repent just as much as anybody else. And I've fallen short of that glory, and so has he. And so that was, and that was my coming to Christ. But I want to share a poem about my dad, and I think this one requires you to close your eyes. I want you to kind of picture this scene. So if you just close your eyes, and I'm gonna start this poem, and I'm gonna take you through an experience. Wake up. It's another day. Chemo's making me have water in my eyes. Doctors told me I've got cancer and 1 to 2 years to be alive. This life can really end in the blink of an eye. It's got me thinking about questions like, where will I go when I die? Will my children be all right? Was I good enough? Did I make the most of my time? My family's down, and it hurts me inside because I've spent my life being their light and now they're dimming inside. How will they cope? When I pass on, will people do the most? Will they fight over my will or hold each other close? Will this make them or break them? God, I know you hear me, but I don't want this to change them. Wake up. It's another day. Chemo's making me have water in my eyes. 3 weeks of treatment and I'm getting fragile over time. My hair's falling out. As a man, it's hindering my pride. I have to rely on those who I'm called to protect with my life. Wake up. It's another day. Chemo's making me have water in my eyes. Doctors told me cancer's progressive. Tell me they tried. I don't have long left, but my hope's still alive. My family's closer than ever, and I think they'll be all right. I've made many memories in this gift called life. I've fought a good race, and I've fought a good fight. I've loved, and I've lived. I've broken, and I've missed. I've shared, I've been angry. I've suffered, yet I forgive. I let go, and I know I've made mistakes. My God knows, but I give this best message to you, which is hold your family close, because you'll wake up one day, and you'll have water in your eyes. And you regret everything you didn't say because you ran out of time. And as my timer ends and I move on to another life, my very prayer is that you make the very most of this ride. Thank you. Thank you so much. So my dad, I lived with him for 7 years and then I got married. And he's like literally one of my closest people, the closest person to me. And I remember when we got married, there was this kind of huge worry about, okay, is he gonna make it? Because I came back from China and they said, you know, when he said, I've got no easy way to tell you this, Storm, but I've had cancer. And basically I went to China, came back and said, I've got cancer. And basically then he's telling me I've got, 1 to 2 years to live. And at this point, over a year had passed. So making it to the wedding is it's not happening kind of thing. But I'm happy to say that he's still here. It's been 3 years now.
Praise God.
And he asked me to write this piece for him. So I was like, well, I'll write it. I mean, imagine your dad kind of saying to you, I want you to write something, about me. I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, what biggest privilege, but I'm like, the topic's not a great one. Do you know what I mean? We could have written about something else, like childhood or something like that. But that was that. My next piece is called Men Are Trash. This is the one that is very interesting, but I think you'll enjoy it. And then I think I've got a little chat to come next. Okay. Click if you enjoy it. Men are the image of their fathers' fathers. Bootleg versions of new and improved versions of trash, a new generational curse that men are wasted space, traditional playboys, but men are trash.
Say that.
Playboys like the toys, just a box with no contents, absolutely nothing to give, just a gaping hole of wasted space and void. They are trash, a waste of God's breath and dust, summoned from the core of elemental disposition. They are the unfruitful words from a God who baptizes the sun every day in his glory just so it can shine, but men are trash. A waste of coarse speech, a waste of molecular compounds and temple and glory and gullible mess, but men are trash. Vipers, the death sucking life out of fashionable brokens. They never tell you that the snake that lured Eve was male. From the Genesis, he was trash, trash, complete and utter trash. But if men are trash, if they are trash, then are our wombs the dumpster trucks God threw them in? Are we a breeding ground and a byproduct of shame? Are our wombs poisoned and damaged, polluted, an inhabitable earth within the wombs of our waters that birth tragedy and sorrow, a 9-month Armageddon and a lifetime of funeral? I guess abortion would then be our savior, because we are the factory that makes playboys and heartbreakers, but men are trash. Because men were always men and boys were of course never raised. And I'm not defended, I'm just debating and contemplating all the scenarios that we've been saying, but men are trash. And our bodies are the tools we use to satisfy them. The landfills that take in these creatures, because of course God must always make rubbish. Thank you. I don't know what to ask you about that, but do I sit down?
Check. Yep, please. Have a seat.
Might not want me to sit down after that.
No, you know, that's how we just maybe dialogue a little bit about that.
Yeah.
It was funny because I heard a guy, when you said men are trash, I heard a guy in the audience say, yep. We are trash. That is interesting. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that piece, Men Are Trash.
Yeah, so that poem was written, I don't know if you guys saw this, but on Twitter, there was like this huge you heard it. It was like there was this absolute massacre of men. Men are trash for waking up. Men are trash for breathing. Men are just trash, trash, trash. And I just didn't agree with it. I was just like, how can we say that men are trash, especially as Christians, you know, when we look at God's creation and God's created them, and that's not to say that, you know, we don't do trashy things. You know, I've definitely had my fair share of heartbreak, but yeah, I wanted to write it to kind of create that, I suppose like a dialogue to kind of, well, if they are trash, then what does that say about us? Because we know that women were saying those things. And so it was kind of a challenge to that. Yeah, and that piece was also written for a competition. I don't know if anyone knows PIA, but there's like genetics, Ezekiel, all these kind of like huge poets that tour. So I entered this competition to basically do that poem at their tour, and then I won it. So it was also part of this kind of competition thing. And
You gotta clap for that.
yeah.
They performed here. We brought the tour here when it was Jackie Hill, the Preston Perry, the original.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. I wish I was here for that.
may I bring you back for it? Or maybe you may get on tour with them. I think they kind of change it up sometimes, right? So they have new artists now.
Yeah.
Did you audition for that?
It was a competition, so they had like 60 different poets competing, and basically the prize was like you could go on, you could do one of the tour dates with them. So I did two pieces, and I got through to both rounds.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, I am so happy that she is here with us, Wheaton College. Let's just clap it up again for I really want to start with maybe just go back a little bit. I mean, your name is Storm Cecile, so let's start there. Give us the premise. Where did that name originate from? Why Storm? What does that mean?
So my middle name is Cecile. My dad's name is Cecil, so there was kind of that connection. Actually means like blind or unseen. I was like, that's not a good name. But my name's Storm. So my parents, they were going on a trip to Spain. They were on like a cruise. And my mom was pregnant. She was 6 months pregnant with me. And 2 people got thrown overboard. So 2 people died on this trip, on this cruise. I know. I don't know how they fell overboard. It must have been some old ship or some sort. Anyway, they fell overboard and they died. And they thought that there was going to be something wrong with me because obviously there's all these currents and stuff happening. And so my mom did a check after, and I was just chilling in the womb. I was fine. So they called me Storm, and that's the story. Yeah.
So my daughter's name is Story. It's spelled with an I. Now, how did she make her way into this conversation? I don't know. I don't know. Like, it just happens. But I love names like that. So when I heard Storm, I was like, oh yeah, she gotta be dope. Dope is a good thing. Dope is like, yo, that's powerful. That's good. That's awesome. So Storm. So earlier today we talked a little bit about your journey as an artist. When did you write your first spoken word piece? And how did you know you wanted to pursue this as a profession? What does that mean for you?
Well, I wrote my absolutely first piece when I was about 6. My sister was dyslexic, and I had a bit of a start. I had some issues, kind of being confident and stuttering quite a lot. So they thought that I would also have dyslexia, and I just didn't really want to accept that. So I started writing an awful lot. I mean, like, it was just, I don't want to say unhealthy because I don't feel like any amount of writing could maybe be unhealthy, but it felt unhealthy because of how much I was doing it. And then I got to 14, like I mentioned earlier, my brother had a car accident, and I was, there was abuse, I was suicidal, trying to take my life, all this kind of crazy stuff. And I realized in Caribbean culture, I'm not sure what the culture is kind of, but in Caribbean, like British culture, you traditionally have godparents. Thankfully, mine were actually godparents, and they used to drop me to school, and they used to say, Jesus loves you, and I was like, oh, I don't really care about that, whatever. That's a nice story, that you made up. And my brother had this car accident. It was really bad. He was 8 years old, and the car came at 40 miles an hour. He flew over the car, hit the car on the side, smashed the window, landed on his feet, shattered his legs, broke his hip bone, broke some rib cage, had prefrontal cortex damage, and it was really bad. And I remember in that moment, I remembered what my godparents had said to me. They're like, when you're going through difficult times, you pray. And I'm thinking, well, if there's a better time to pray, it better be now. So I literally got on my knees in like this panic on the road after he said, Storm, I love you, I'm sorry, bye. He's unconscious, he's gone. And I'm just like, Lord, if you save my brother, I will give my life to you. Like, I will be a martyr. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I will just be full out for you. They had to fly him to the hospital because it was really bad. He was unconscious before he even got into the helicopter. And my mom called me because I have two younger sisters, and of course my younger brother who's now gone to the hospital. My mom calls me and says, oh, he's made it, but he's not going to be able to walk again. So I was like, okay, well, give my life to God, but this prayer thing that you've been talking about, let me do it again. Let me pray again, because maybe he'll walk again, and I'm still kind of skeptical, Jesus, I've said I've given my life to you, but, it was a spur of the moment thing. But let me pray again. Let me see what happens. And he starts walking again, and he starts kind of.
Wait, you just think fast forward.
Right,
okay. There was some time. It's not
right.
like it was a miracle. It wasn't like a miracle in the sense of get up and walk kind of. It wasn't like Billy Graham and stuff. Get up, like no, it wasn't that. But he gradually started to walk again. So I kind of was being carried with my mom, and over the I can't remember how long it was because it's so long ago, but it was probably about a 2-year period. He started walking again and understanding, and so it was a real blessing to see that, and that's how I started writing properly, and that's also how I gave my life to Christ.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yo, can we just clap it up for her prayer life, though? We need some of that. That's pretty cool. So, with the relationship with your brother, where is that now? How are you experiencing that? What does that teach you every time you see your brother? I know you talk a little bit about that. Expound on that spoken word piece too.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for him because, well, although it was a tragic situation, I don't think I would have given my life to Christ. I don't think I would have been bothered to have done the work and to study and to understand who is Christ, who is Jesus, what does that mean for my life, what does that mean for eternity. I don't think I would have bothered if I'm being really honest. And so I'm really thankful for him in that sense. It's only recently in the past like 2 months where he's actually said that he's given his life, in the sense that he's acknowledged that Jesus is real and he's starting to make some real changes. He went through a period where he was just not doing the right things. Kind of, I suppose it was maybe a sense of frustration about life and why does this have to happen to me? And of course, understandably, kind of what had happened. But it's now that he's starting to kind of do a bit of a pivot, which is crazy because it's been 10 years since the accident. So yeah, because I was 14, now I'm 24. So yeah.
So do you think that in that story, or is it a tapestry of like seeing, or where are some stories where you really see God working in his heart, in his conversations, in some of his engagements? He don't see it, but you see it, and you try to speak that into him, like, hey, do you see God operating here?
I remember when there's a few thoughts that have come to my head, but I remember there was one time I was doing this course at Christian Concern. They're like the legal centre for Christians in the UK. And it was this cultural course, and you had to basically interview somebody who wasn't a Christian and essentially understand things from their point of view. And I remember asking my brother, this was before he, even considered being a Christian. I said, like, what's your view on like morality? What's your view on right and wrong? Because he was just misbehaving and doing all sorts of stuff. And I was like, so what's your view on morality? Let's have this conversation now. And he was like, I do know what's right. I do know right from wrong. And I think for me, especially studying psychology, part of my degree, I studied business and psychology with French. But first of all, looking at scripture and knowing that everybody essentially has that in them. It's whether they choose to suppress that, really. He had suppressed it in his actions, but in his conscience it was still alive. And I think for me that was just a little gem of like, okay, there's some hope here. There's something I can pray into. There's like a little seed that's like, the tree poem. I love trees, by the way, so I love that poem. But it was just this, this little thought. Okay, so you have consciousness. You're conscious of right and wrong, and if you're conscious of right and wrong, then there is room for repentance, and if there's room for repentance, then there's room for Jesus, and there's always room for Jesus. So that's great. Yeah.
That is good. I think that, and I want to open it up for questions too. So if anybody has some questions, feel free to jump in. I'll ask this last question, and then we'll open it up for some questions, and then you have more pieces.
I have a few more.
You can do 10 more if you want to, but
I like 2 or 3 more.
Okay. Well, maybe we can end this time maybe around 8:15, just so people can know that. So I'll ask this question, then feel free to jump in and ask some questions. So what I've seen, even just within just the story of the gospel, and just through walking with my family, I'm one of the first. In my family, I grew up around Christians, and I would see them go to church, but maybe do something else. So it wasn't necessarily living up to what the scriptures call us to, that standard. So I never really, I didn't get saved until I was 19. But then I began to, when I got saved, then I became that dude in my family, right? That's like, hey, we're not gonna eat until Stephen gets here so he can pray. It's like, yo, I'm running 2 hours late, y'all. But they would wait though, right? I'm the person in my family that they'll call, hey, I'm going through these things, can you pray for me? Do you have any advice? What are you thinking? What is God saying? Like, whoa, okay. It's a sense of responsibility. Do you feel that sense of responsibility with your brother or other family members, perhaps?
definitely. I definitely feel that. I think with my parents, I moved to my dad's house when I was, I don't know, like maybe nearly 16, just before coming to college, 14, 15, 16, I was kind of transitioning between homes and stuff. And I remember when I first moved to my dad's house, it was like, don't want to hear the Christian music. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. You don't need to hear no Christian music. I'm gonna just pray for you. I'll pray for you, you know, as I'm doing stuff. And then it moved from the Christian music to like, okay, you can play that in the car if it's upbeat. Okay, cool. So then we play the upbeat music. And I remember one time he was dropping me to university. I don't know what happened to me this day. We were driving in the car. This was one of the I'll let you play the Christian music days in the car. And I just started praying. I'm like, Lord, I just think, I said, is it okay if I pray? And he said, yeah, sure, you can pray. I'm like, Lord, I just thank you. And it was just meant to be like, I thank you, Lord, for getting to university. And it just turned into this like warfare prayer in the car. It was like, it was just intense. And my dad at the end, he just started crying. He's like, wow, okay.
Okay.
And that was it. It was like, well, enjoy university now. And we haven't spoken about it since, but I think it's nice because even though, you know, you see those little glimpses of hope in your family, right? Like there's these little moments where it's like, okay, they're starting to acknowledge Jesus, which is great. Or they ask you a question and it's like, oh, God, okay, I'm ready. Because I've been reading my word and I know what to say now, like, so we thank God. But I think to add to that question, I think the thing that has been the most special is, so I started this project called the Christian Busman Project. It's like a street ministry, and I did it at my dad's house. I started it at my dad's house, and I took over the living room with all this gear and stuff. And there was one time where they were suicidal. They were part of the team, and it wasn't safe for them to be by themselves. So I said to my dad, hey, can they like stay over? I'm happy for them to sleep in my bed and to just like be there kind of thing. So they stayed for like a week and a half or something like that. And my dad was like, after they had left, he was like, you know, I've never seen a Christian, you know, kind of offer themselves like that. And I thought, you know, it's great to pray. I love prayer. It's great to intercede. It's great to have those intercessory warfare journeys. But I think the time I've seen the most impact is just giving myself and then my family, like witnessing that. I think that has been the most impactful.
Can we open it up for some questions? I think that's pretty powerful too. I think the power of prayer is important. Just to put on the platform and just talk about it is very key. But the living it out is key, and just seeing how God uses your life to really draw people to Him just through your witness. So that's pretty powerful.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, sir. What's your question? What you got?
Yes. Hey, my name is Christian. I heard in each one of your poems, and then just now as you were answering the questions, you mentioned the word hope. Is that like a theme? I mean, I'm sure that it is, but why do you think that kind of finds its way into each one of your pieces and stories?
I didn't actually realize that was even in each one, to be honest. Probably because I've written them at different times, and so I just never thought how they connect. But I feel like I have a lot of hope. But why would we not? Do you know what I mean? Like, we have Jesus. And I think before I became a Christian, I feel like I was so depressed. And don't get me wrong, I have my moments like when I'm just like, this is too much. But I think I have a lot of hope, just generally, like that things will get better. God is always going to be there. And that He's with me in every situation. Like, my favorite psalm is like Psalm 23. And it just highlights God's goodness, that He walks with us in every scenario. So thank you for pointing that out. I didn't actually realize that. But I think at the end of the day, out of the abundance of our heart, the mouth speaks. And I do have a lot of hope. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to write that down.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Jada.
Hi, I'm Jada. Thank you so much for coming today. What poets have influenced you in your style?
I love Rudy Francisco. I think his page poetry and his performance poetry is great.
Yeah.
He's very passionate when he performs and when he expresses himself. I love Chris Webb. There's two reasons for that. The first reason is because, of course, I met him. And I have this one video on my phone where he's like, "This girl is a beast." I'm like, that's my favorite video of all time. I love that video. But he's just such a great poet. He uses creative, it's almost like he blends the arts together.
Yeah.
So like he has the visual side, he has the performance element of it. He uses, recently I did a performance with projection mapping, which is like almost like the room being the video, if that makes sense. And like, I just love that kind of stuff. And I think he's a great artist. And I think that he performs really well. And so those would be my two favorites. I love Jackie Hill Perry as well. Yeah, she's good.
I have a question about art and vulnerability. I'm a singer-songwriter, and sometimes I write stuff and I play it for people and they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that was a lot to share. And I kind of was thinking about that when you shared your testimony at the beginning and how vulnerable that is, and also how much it can impact people and help them heal. So I'd love to hear about like where you draw a line, if you draw a line, or just how you think about that along with redemption.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
You know, I don't share anything that I'm not over yet. So I remember we went to a poetry night and a lot of the people were saying, you know, poetry is like therapy to me. And I completely get the sentiment. However, I don't receive therapy from sharing with you. I receive my therapy from God because this is my ministry. So when I go to an event, I'm not going to bear my burdens on you guys. I'm going to minister to you. But I can't minister if I'm still burdened by what I'm sharing. I mean, I remember we were I was doing that poem, the first one that I did, my testimony at Saddleback Church. And people were weeping, they were crying. And I remember Morgan, my husband, was like, "How are you not crying after you just shared this piece?" And I was just thinking, you know, of course it's emotional to think back on the things that you've been through, but I'm not bound by what I've been through. Yeah. You know, it's not as if I'm like reliving it and going through like this sense of trauma. I'm almost looking at it from an outside perspective, you know, because God has come in and he's done the work. Now I can tell the story. Isn't that like what redemption, isn't that like we overcame by the blood of the Lamb? Isn't that what testimony is? I've been through this, I've suffered, but here I am to share the good news. And the good news is that I'm not bound by that anymore. And that doesn't define me. So I just encourage you to continue sharing as long as it's, you know, you're not doing it from a place of like complete despair and suffering. Right for that, but you don't have, not everything needs to be shared. Some things are for the audience of one. I've only started sharing that poem this year, you know, and that was how long ago, but I wrote that poem a few years ago. So yeah, keep up the great work. And thank you for your question.
Hannah?
Do you ever perform for spaces that are not Christian? And if so, does that impact how you perform or what you share?
I do. Most of my work, actually probably half and half, is Christian and non-Christian. How I share, it doesn't stop me from sharing the gospel. I will definitely say that. I mean, I feel like I can't keep my mouth shut about the gospel. I just can't. I remember I did a commission, this was like recently, maybe like a month or two ago, for the Transport Museum. And the Transport Museum is connected to TfL. TfL is essentially our network for our transport all across London, so it's like pretty big. And there were 8 poets, and I was the only Christian. People were going through different, they're going through different, things. Just so you get a demographic, 2 black people, so me and this other guy. One person was identified as queer, one person identified as transgender, and then there were a few like non-binary people, just so you can get a demographic for the room. But I was the only Christian in the room, which is the kind of focus that I want you to see. And I remember we were doing like this talk, so how can you get into poetry kind of thing? And I'm sitting there like, well, Lord, I know what you're gonna do now. And I'm sitting there, and everybody's like, I use poetry to like find myself, and I'm still discovering myself, which is great in the sense of like you're using something to kind of understand more of who you are. But whether that becomes an idol is a different conversation. And that was great, and I really enjoyed listening to people's stories, but my story is very different. And so I just was honest, and I was like, well, my brother had a car accident, and I just got on the floor and I said I'm gonna give my life to God, and then started doing poetry from there, and continued from there, and it opened up this room, this door of conversation. How do you see God? What's your view on this? What's your view on that? Look, I'm not the fountain of all knowledge, but at least they got to know a bit more about Jesus, and that was great. So I think for me, I'm not really fussed. I do what God tells me to do. There was another time, the poem "Men Are Trash." Obviously, the Volta, the change in that poem, but if men are trash, then our wombs are dumps and trucks go through them. And it's more a question, not really a this is the truth, but is it? If they are, then are we this kind of thing? And I remember there was this girl, and she came to that poetry event, and she was like, I don't agree with that, and but you mentioned God, and blah, blah, and it was this whole thing, and I was like, well, that's great, let's have a chat about it. And 4 years later, this is not 6 months later, 6 weeks, 6 days, 4 years later, she comes to an event that I'm doing for the Christian Busking Project, and she says, I've given my life to Christ, and it started because of that poem.
Wow.
I mean, exactly. At the end of the day, like, my job is not to filter what God is saying. That's not my job. It can be offensive to whoever it needs to be offensive to, but maybe your offense is going to bring you to truth. And if it brings you to truth, hey, I've done my job, and I'm not really bothered. But hopefully that answers the question. To be confident in whatever sphere you're in, it doesn't matter whether people have different opinions. Like I said, the audience of one. When you do that poem, yes, you're ministering, but you're also sharing. That's you're doing that to God as well. And our art form should do that, definitely.
So talking about that, the differences of opinion, I think that leads us to, I think you know where we're going.
Yeah.
You have a piece online, and it's one of your most popular pieces, but we talked about it a little bit earlier today. It's called Pro-Life, Pro-Choice. It's pro-life. In the piece, as I watched it, it was a sense of, I know your convictions. I kind of felt it. I don't know if it was the artist in me. I don't know if it was just because I love spoken word poetry, but I felt like I knew, like, this is where she leans. When we talked today, it was confirmed. So I was like, okay, cool, I was right.
Yeah.
But it was this sense of, like, seeing you be a witness within the marketplace with your art. And really proclaiming the truth of the gospel, and also where you stand in the midst of that conversation. And I thought it was powerful because it's not easy to kind of play both sides, and it was a duality there.
Isn't it funny how people make decisions that don't affect them? A woman's womb isn't public property nor a man's prerogative. It takes 2 to create life, but only 1 must burden it. Women take 1 step forward and then 5 back. What the heck is this? Woman and mother are not synonymous. She is her own being, autonomous. And see, part of reproductive freedom is the liberation to be erogenous. Men are just as sexual, but then women bear the consequence. So what? Abortion gets abolished, and one must have confidence in this government. No childcare, no formula. We're sick and tired of the politics. Your morality, it doesn't bother me. Sometimes abortion is necessary. Sometimes it looks like shame. Other times it looks like the face of abuse, guilt, rage. What if a child's right to life is a woman's death plight? Must she, what, carry her own coffin and pray to God that she survives? Abortion has allowed women to build economies and businesses without pregnancy holding her back, and yet we want to go back to a time when she was enslaved to a man. Nah, we've come too far for this. Life is only a gift if you actually want it. You may not like this, but this is a fact. Motherhood should be a choice and not a trap. So, if it is about women's rights, then what about children's rights? And if a heartbeat beats in week 6, then who gives you the right to beat life out of a fetus? Is your body an asylum that you must seek freedom from nature's season? Has the woman's womb become a war zone, an embellished graveyard? What about your agendas? Your Margaret Sanger eugenics? Since Black Lives Matter, does that change at conception? Police with guns would protest, but doctors with knives get acceptance. Wombs wombed with war. Guess there's no place for rest. Bodies brutally bulleted in life and abortion celebrated for death. Ectopics, rape. We sympathize and understand. But ectopic pregnancies actually need healthcare. You decide to use abortion as a contraceptive plan. You say men are not involved, but you choose them. You say anyone is a woman who claims it, so which one is it? Which one are you saying? We're not pushing on your rights, we're pushing for life. Reproductive freedom should not come at the cost of fetal genocide or children having the right to thrive. You can't expect to have sex and not be exempt from nature's conquest. So before you defend abortion, first know what you are defending. The child's feet are ripped from its legs and you call that healthcare. I guess it's fair for you to assume that everything is about you. Or like it or not, you were created to care for another too. You're wombed in wisdom. So answer me this. If a fetus isn't human, then why is there a procedure to kill it? Bacteria is considered life on Mars, but a heartbeat is insignificant. You can have your choices, but know that every action has a precipitant.
Cool, I've got a piece and it's called I Play Squash with Judas. This was also part of the competition that I did with PIA. So this is the first piece I entered, the second one was Men Are Trash. I play squash with Judases, cast lots with some devils, been chucked in oceans like Jonahs, thrown across rivers like pebbles. I've been Job without the faith. I've been salty without Sodom. I've been Lot with only a little. I've been patient despite the problems. I've been tired. I've been weak. I've been Joseph who just fled. I've been Esau who felt betrayed. I've been to Psalms to find his name. I've moved from Eden to fallen Jerusalem, Mount Sinai to the pits. This year, I was the biggest betrayer. When I said, God, this is it. I've cried rivers, battled soldiers, conquered giants, ran them over, stopped temptation, fought Delilahs, turned to God when I hear silence. I've been torn, and I've been stretched, and several times, oh, Jesus wept. We've been beaten, battered, bruised, but have you not heard the good news? See, I am grateful that despite all of this, it will soon pass away. And that the tears I've cried this year will pass away in Jesus' name. I'm grateful for presence and his presence, for family and friends, for beginnings and New Year's and also smashing ends. I'm grateful for moments and minutes
and hours and days. For the time this year, I've been on my knees to pray. So despite trouble and hardship and every world attack, I am confident that I know that my God has a plan. And as for your personal struggles this year you have seen, God wants you to know that this year you'll be free, so keep praying and waiting and fasting and staying. Keep singing and humming and patiently waiting. This year may be tough, but no pain, no expansion. Look to the book of Nehemiah, for he was a man of action. So it may have been Job or Ruth or Esther or Seth. But despite all of your struggles, you haven't seen the best. So keep looking to God, for narrow is the gate. This year may be hard, but look forward for change. Thank you.
Can we give it up for Storm one more time, y'all? Make time for Isis as well. That you're here. I think she's gonna be here for some time, so people can engage, maybe perhaps.
Yeah.
I would say definitely connect with Storm after this if you want to talk to her. Her and her husband Morgan is here, and they'll be here for some time. I think I would love to sit down and have coffee with you too, but I can imagine, man, I would love to cover some cups of coffee if students wanted to connect with you sometime next week.
Aww.
So definitely connect with her while she's here, see if we can set something up like that. I want to encourage you to check out our website, because that's where Choice versus Life is.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can check that video out. I encourage you to do that. And I'm just so grateful that you shared with us tonight, because you're a beautiful artist and you have something to say. And the beautiful thing about it the most is you love Jesus and you share that throughout your art. And man, I think that's the most powerful thing we can do. Use our art to promote the gospel. So thank you so much for being here. Hey, can we give it up for Storm one more time?